Envision a world where evildoers try to have sex with angels and where fathers have their daughters have babies. Today, we will explore the life of Lot, a man whose decisions set in motion a series of remarkable events. Prepare to see a civilization wiped out by the wrath and retribution of God. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, click that like button, and enable notifications so you never miss an update before we get into today's content. Beginning in chapter 11 of Genesis, the book of Genesis provides the first tales of Lot in the Bible. No one knows where the biblical character Lot got his name or what it means at the beginning of his story. The significance of making a good impression on others is suggested by some researchers who think it may symbolize a covering, like a veil. Lot, his grandpa Terah, his uncle Abraham, and Sarai set off for Haran after the death of Lot's father, as recorded in the Bible. Lot accompanied Abraham to Canaan after he left Haran following Terah's death. Because of the terrible famine in Canaan, Abraham and Lot fled to Egypt and made their home there. But Lot went back to Canaan with Abraham and Sarai when the Pharaoh of Egypt exiled them for deceiving him. It was at this time that Abraham and Lot enjoyed great prosperity. Arguments arose among the shepherds as a result of the region's inability to support both of their rapidly expanding herds. When comparing Abraham and Lot in the Bible, the main difference is in the basic decisions they make in response to opportunities and threats they encounter on their travels. The way Abraham lives his life reflects his character traits of obedience and confidence in God's promises. Because he follows his faith in making decisions, he stands out as someone who prioritizes God's will over his own worldly pursuits. Think back to the story of the three strangers who showed up at Mamre and how Abraham showed incredible hospitality while receiving life-changing news. Conversely, Lot seemed to be more and more swayed by the allure of material wealth and chances that looked to be promising. Abraham and Lot chose to separate for these reasons. Abraham's choice to distance himself from Lot in an effort to maintain peace and prevent arguments demonstrates his spiritual maturity. He prioritizes oneness with God and community above worldly strife. In the direction of the Dead Sea, close to Sodom, Lot selected the verdant Jordanian plains. The region's natural beauty and plenty drew him in, and he gave in to his baser desires. Though it makes sense from a human point of view, Lot's choice shows how susceptible he is to worldly temptations, in contrast to Abraham's unshakable faith. Lot returned to Sodom after the separation and immediately got active in community events, giving the impression that he had risen to a high social position. But Lot was much troubled by the fact that the people of Sodom were described in the Bible as exceedingly evil. Lot was haunted by the wickedness he saw in the city every day, according to the New Testament's Apostle Peter. Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zor were all destroyed in a single battle that occurred while Lot was there by monarchs from Mesopotamia. Lot and every other resident of Sodom were captured and their property were looted during this battle. After learning what had happened, Abraham rallied a rescue squad that, after a nocturnal struggle, vanquished the enemy and rescued Lot and his family. The story continues when angels come to Sodom. Despite God's intervention, the city continued to spiral into anarchy and depravity, highlighting God's care for human depravity. The message of Jeremiah 23 verse 24, which emphasizes that God listens to the cry of injustice, is resonant with this circumstance. The fact that God steps in when evil threatens humankind is evidence of his zeal for righteousness and his readiness to take action. By announcing his plan to look into Sodom's transgressions, the Lord demonstrates his zeal for justice and his dislike of wickedness. But God chooses to demolish the city when he sees how disappointed people are. Because of their treatment of the Lord's angels, the biblical account highlights the wickedness of the people of Sodom. An important factor in the demise of Sodom was the men's wicked desire to engage in sexual intercourse with angels. In an attempt to quell the unrest, Lot did something controversial. He gave over his daughters to the men of the city. This shows how vulnerable he was and how much the city had affected him. Here we find the Bible diving into Abraham's brave petition to the Lord, which shows a sincere desire for heavenly wisdom and fairness. Even though he knows that Sodom will soon be destroyed, Abraham has the courage to ask God whether it is possible to save the virtuous people along with the wicked. This bold discussion is in line with the encouragement in James 5 verse 16, which stresses the efficacy and strength of a virtuous person's prayer. The story continues with Abraham and God's daring bargain, in which Abraham questions whether or not the city may be spared for the sake of the righteous. It is in this setting that Psalm 86 verse 15 proclaims, "But you, Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness." This contemplation emphasizes God's readiness to listen to his slaves' supplications and respond compassionately to their earnest prayers. The narrative shows how God is compassionate, and it also shows how important it is to keep trying to get justice and mercy. The Bible describes a major event that occurred prior to the destruction of Sodom when God decided to destroy the plain cities, including Gomorrah. Two heavenly beings sent by God saved Lot and his household. Because God was faithful to the covenant he made with Abraham, and because of his divine mercy, this deliverance came to pass. The men became blinded as a result of the angel's persistence on being captured by the people of Sodom. Lot was subsequently told by the angels to take his entire family and flee the condemned city. Angels had to drag Lot out of Sodom by the collar because he was reluctant to leave. The family was instructed not to turn around while they were escaping. Nevertheless, because she disobeyed the command, Lot's wife became a salt pillar. As a striking illustration of what happens when we disobey God's instructions, Lot's wife is turned into a salt sculpture. Lot, though spared from imminent destruction, is not exempt from the moral consequences of his choices. Lot has a hard time keeping his morals straight in the face of all the corruption around him because he chose to live near Sodom, which exposed his family to a toxic environment. Christian communities today are increasingly like Lot's, where values that run counter to the Bible's teachings are commonplace. Lot and his two daughters fled to a nearby town after fleeing Sodom out of fear. They took refuge in a cave in a mountainous region, showing a hesitation to fully trust in God's plan. This attitude contrasts with the unwavering trust Abraham demonstrated during his journey, even in the face of uncertainties and challenges. Lot's decision to take refuge in a cave symbolizes, in a way, the human tendency to seek isolation when confronted with adversity. The cave may represent not only a physical shelter, but also a state of emotional and spiritual seclusion. This raises the question of how traumatic experiences can impact a person's ability to fully engage in life and relationships. It was in this place that a terrible event occurred. Fearing for their safety, Lot's daughters, motivated by a lack of understanding of moral and ethical norms, devised a plan to generate offspring from an incestuous union with their father. Moab and Ben-Ammi were born, giving rise to the nations of the Moabites and Ammonites, respectively, which caused various problems for the Israelites throughout biblical history. The narrative about Lot in the Bible continues, highlighting his complex and controversial relationship with his daughters. After the events in Sodom, however, Lot's story remains without further details. It is unclear whether he managed to rebuild his life or ended his days in the cave in the mountains where the events with his daughters took place. It's important to note that the Apostle Peter mentions Lot in his second epistle, specifically in chapter 2, 7 and 8. This passage is another reference to the episode of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah in the New Testament. Jesus also mentions Lot in the Gospel of Luke in an apocalyptic context, recalling the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's salvation. This account serves as a reminder for the end times, emphasizing the importance of readiness and obedience to God. The biblical account shows us that Lot had the opportunity to learn from Abraham, known as the father of faith. However, unlike his uncle Abraham, Lot did not follow faith but rather his own perceptions and desires. This personal approach brought many afflictions and left deep scars on his family. Lot's story serves as an example of the consequences of choices guided more by personal visions than by faith and divine guidance. Valuable lessons for current Christian life emerge from this account. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah highlights the importance of making ethical choices even when facing cultural pressures. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, exhorts believers not to conform to the standards of this world, but to be transformed by the renewal of the mind. Romans 12 verse 2. This passage demonstrates the need for contemporary Christians to stand firm in their faith and moral values regardless of external influences. I hope you liked today's video. If you've made it this far, 2 identical videos will show on your screen. Just click to watch. Thank you, and may God be with you.